Welcome to State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. The State of Wellbeing is a holistic well-being podcast with the goal of supporting the campus community as we strive to be a growing, high-performing, and healthy university.
The State of Wellbeing podcast episode focuses on breast cancer survivorship and its impact on well-being, daily work, and resilience in leadership. Today, we are with Michaela Willis, and she is going to be our guest. And I'm Sherry Landmark. I'm Chief Wellness Officer here at South Dakota State University. And I'll let Michaela introduce herself a little more in detail.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sherry. It's great to be with you today and looking forward to the conversation. I'm Michaela Willis. I serve as a Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management here at South Dakota State University. Been here for about 10 years and work with you regularly, so it's been a fun place to be.
Well, thank you for joining me today. Breast Cancer Awareness Month is near and dear to my heart. My mother-in-law went through breast cancer and is a breast cancer survivor, and you are one of my heroes as well, going through this and still being able to lead our division and just show that you are human too. And I think that's important, and that's why I really wanted to chat with you today about your journey.
Well, I look forward to it, Sherry. I think it's a great honor to be here and represent all of the breast cancer survivors and those that are in the battle today and those that have gone before us as well. Representing all of them, it's an honor to be here.
Great. Well, as we said, first of all, we've got a couple sections here we're going to go throughout today. But first section is really about the personal journey and the resilience. So can you maybe share a little bit about your breast cancer journey and what survivorship means to you today?
Yeah, sure. So this will probably be a little bit of a longer answer, and the rest of them I'll try to be a little bit more brief. But so I was actually thinking back to this, and it's a date that stays in my mind. And May 10th of 2023 was when I received the call from the Sanford Breast Center telling me that my biopsy results were back and that I had breast cancer. And it's a day that stands out to me. But earlier that year, I was experiencing some pain under one of my arms and had my mammogram scheduled. And so went in for my mammogram. It came back with some findings that were suspicious at the time, which I wasn't too worried about, but we did an ultrasound. Those came back suspicious too, and so they said, let's do a biopsy. And so the week after commencement, I went in and had my first breast biopsy on my right breast, and within, I went in for the procedure, and the very next day, for some reason, I just felt like I needed to go home and a little bit early from work. And about 4 o'clock, I got a phone call from them telling me that my results were back. They were back pretty quickly, and that I had invasive ductal carcinoma. From there, I called my husband and said, I think you need to come home. And we had our moment together and then figured out, okay, here we go. The next 2 weeks were quite a blur, I will say. And meeting with oncologists, meeting with surgeons, meeting with all of the different teams through Sanford. And for 2 weeks, I was being poked and prodded and had scan after scan just to kind of figure out what we were working with. And then 2 weeks from diagnosis, I started chemotherapy. So I started chemotherapy actually right before Memorial Weekend, and had 8 rounds of chemotherapy every 2 weeks. On a Friday, I would go in and have chemo. Had one cocktail for the first 4 times, and then a different cocktail for the next. Actually, I'm trying to remember, was it 8 and 8? I'm trying to remember, but anyway. But it was basically I finished my last round of chemotherapy the Friday before Labor Day, and so it went Memorial to Labor Day, and then had the choice of what I wanted to do for a mastectomy, and so I ended up doing a double mastectomy, personal choice. Just seemed like the right thing to do at the time, and then did reconstruction right away as part of that. So worked with a great plastics team as well, and they did that all in one procedure. I was out of work for about 6 weeks, and then they gave me a little bit of time to recover from that beyond, and then I started radiation therapy. And so radiation, I had 56 rounds of radiation, and oddly, my heart is not in the normal spot for most people, and so it's in the center of my chest. And so
Really?
I got to hold my breath while I did my radiation, and so that was an interesting experience. But January 5th was when I finished my last radiation treatment, got to ring the bell for that second time. And then we went to Frisco and celebrated a Jackrabbit National Championship #2. And so it was a really great, it was a great celebration. But ended up, I had stage 3 breast cancer, and it was pretty involved in my lymph nodes, and just really, really glad for the care that I received through the Edith Sanford Breast Center, the oncology team there. They were phenomenal. So that's maybe a little bit of a walkthrough of what that looks like. And I think about today, and I always think about any challenge in life, and I think about, what can I learn from this? What am I supposed to learn from this experience? And we'll talk a little bit about some of the leadership things that I learned. But I do think I learned perhaps stronger empathy and leadership was a big one. You know, don't take life for granted, because you never know what's going to happen. Spend the time with your family, and I think those are things that you just reflect back on and think, yep. There was a lot of learning. Slow down a little bit. Pay attention to your own health, because that's what matters. And so a lot of learning throughout that process.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the most unexpected challenges that you faced during treatment and recovery, besides your heart being more in the center of your body?
Yeah, I learned all sorts of strange things. I always knew that I hated blood draws and pokes, and that didn't get any better, but I'm used to it perhaps a little bit more. I think you don't know what you don't know going into an experience like this. And I will say, those first 2 weeks after diagnosis, we didn't feel like, both my husband and I, we did not feel like our life was our own, because we were in Sioux Falls almost every day. We were back and forth, tests upon tests upon tests, talking to people, figuring out, making decisions pretty quickly on what we needed to do. And so just how quick they moved, that was a little bit of a surprise. And I mean, going from diagnosis to first treatment in 2 weeks, that was impressive. I mean, they wanted to get after things and get things moving. And so I would say that time was really hard. Also thinking about, I mean, I have a big job. I have a big job, and the university relies on me to play a pretty big role. And working with President Dunn to try and figure out what that was going to look like, how it was going to work when you're going into so much unknown. I didn't know how I would respond to chemo. I wanted to work through everything other than my 6 weeks that I had to take off for my surgeries, and that was the plan. But nobody knows going into it how you're going to react and respond. And so working with President Dunn to figure that out, we actually brought in a dear friend and colleague, Kim Grieve from USD, to come and spend some time here and really be me while I wasn't able to be me and be on campus. And that was such a blessing to have that support. But definitely unexpected challenges. I mean, you don't know what it's going to be like to step into the shower and wash your hair, and you have a big handful of hair in, and from that experience, and take that deep breath and be like, okay, today's the day that the hair's going, and all right, honey, grab the clippers and let's shave the head off and get rid of it all. figuring out how to tie a scarf around my head. That was an experience. But I knew going into this that it was going to be visible. There's no way to hide this when I was stage 3 and had to have such intense treatment. And so I also had to learn to embrace it. And I mean, people were going to know. And I've never been incredibly open and transparent with some of those things in my life, but that was something that I had to really make peace with and say, you know what, people are going to know, they're going to see it, and so I'm going to talk about it, and it's okay to talk about it. So a lot of different things, a lot of challenges, but I had a really great team here at the university, and I also think when I came to SDSU 10 years ago, you saw the loyalty, you saw the pride in this university. I knew that I was working with a great team and with great leadership and President Dunn and senior team, but it's in those times of life challenges where you really get a feel for where you are. And I will say that Jackrabbit Nation, they wrapped their arms around not only myself, but my whole family. I had one of my kiddos. My daughter was in college here. My son was a senior in high school, looking at coming to SDSU. My husband, integral part, but everybody just wrapped their arms around all of us and made it okay no matter what we needed. And so that was uplifting in the times where you're going through all those challenges.
That's really where you hear a lot where your personal core values really do need to align with your work and those core values. And you really just explain that and how that aligns. And it helps you come to work every day, right? And just reinforces why South Dakota State is just an amazing place to work for, isn't it? There's just so many things. And today is just one reason why. So thank you.
Yeah.
So let's kind of move on. How did your survivorship affect your emotional and mental well-being, both during and after treatment?
So I think going through any challenge in life, whether it's a health challenge, whether it's a family challenge, no matter what it is, you go on a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. I've not been shy in sharing that, I've battled anxiety my whole life. It's been a part of who I am. And I think sometimes as a high performer, it's something that a lot of us face. And so when I think about my well-being, my emotional health during this time, there was definitely a roller coaster. And there were times where I had to step back and almost give myself permission to feel what I needed to feel. Give my family permission to feel what they needed to feel. If you need to sit on the couch and cry for a little bit, you sit on the couch and you cry for a little bit, and then you figure out how to bring it back together and move forward. I also think, though, that, again, being in such a big role, being incredibly visible at this university, people expected strength. I mean, and maybe that's not fair, but I think people look to you as the leader and they expect you to have all of the answers and, to lead in that way. And so I had to, there were times I had to dig deep to put that smile on my face. But people also understood. My colleagues, everyone that I worked with understood that this was hard, and there were going to be times when I probably couldn't do certain things that I wanted to do. And one of those things that I think was particularly challenging was I've been pretty engaged across the university. I love going to programs and events and being present and active and engaged. And during this time, I literally couldn't. I had to put my personal health before those things that I love to do, and that as a leader, people need to see you at those programs and events and see that support that you have for them. And for 2 years, really, I've had to pull back from that because I've been immunocompromised. And so So that has an impact. Like, you don't feel like you're making as big of a difference, and I'm one that's motivated by making a difference and giving. And I had to take a little bit more than I gave during this time, and that was perhaps hard to resolve in my mind. But you also, I mean, you're strong when you need to be strong. Nobody expects to be diagnosed with cancer, and when you are, you simply have to, step up to the plate and do what needs to be done to move forward.
Thank you. Were there any other moments maybe that you felt at odds with your profession or responsibilities during this time, and how did you navigate those?
Having my good friend Kim come and help and lead right alongside me was such an amazing experience. I got to do that with her for 2 years, but I won't say that it was always easy, because stepping back and being okay with someone else taking the reins and leading and making the decisions that normally I would make, that was hard sometimes, but I knew that's what I had to do. And we had just gone through a reorganization in our division as well, and had an opportunity to even give you, Sherry, some more responsibilities, which you've done just phenomenal with. But even just taking a step back and saying, okay, team, it's time for you to step up and lead. And oh my goodness, I'm so proud of everyone stepping up and doing really great work. I knew that you were all ready to do that, and I didn't have to worry. But there were times where, I would be on medical leave, or I'd be sitting at chemo and thinking about what I had to do here. Also, it was the first time that I had to miss Meet State, and I wasn't here for move-in weekend in that 8 years that I'd been here. So what did I do? Of course, I took my Meet State T-shirt and I went to chemo that Friday and put on my shirt and sent a picture saying, "Here I am. I'm doing what I need to do, but I'm here supporting you as well." And so you find those opportunities to still connect in those ways, but it's hard, and I think you just have to recognize that it's hard at times.
Absolutely. And that really kind of goes into just really that workplace and leadership impact. And during that time, we were just starting to rework a university strategic plan, the Pathway to Premier 2030. And one of the 4 strategies and goals was to be a growing and high-performing, healthy university. And it just shows, coming from the top, that we as a university support being healthy and really taking care of ourselves. And then we come to that next level down. And our Student Affairs and Enrollment Management strategic plan, we have a goal to commit to a healthy employment culture that promotes professional development and employee well-being. And we've really embraced that with a committee to really look at those areas, but really looking at fostering and supporting a culture that values our employees and promotes that belonging and connection and enhances well-being. And I see that people, what you went through, and you didn't see a lot of this, but they admired you taking that time, and they knew it was hard. But you being open and honest, that was hard for us also to see that. But having that vulnerability and being able to see that in a leader showed us that it's okay, right? That there are times that we also need to take a moment and take care of ourselves if we need to. And it really does drive home when these words are in our division strategic plan as well as our university strategic plan. And that just, I don't know, that hits hard, and that goes once again where those core values align both personally and with our university.
Yep, definitely. I had to live it. I had to live that that well-being, employee well-being. I had to model it, and wasn't always easy to model it because I'm not one that's gonna cry over spilled milk. I'm gonna just dig in and figure out the path forward. But you're right. People needed to see that leadership too, and that everybody goes through hard things, Sherry.
Oh,
Everybody goes through
absolutely.
hard things. And of course, this is my story and my opportunity to share it. But there are so many people that have been through equally or more challenging things in their lives. And as a university, as an employer, as a leader here, it's really important that we all take care of ourselves, because if we don't have a healthy Sherry, if we don't have a healthy Michaela, if we don't have a healthy whomever, we can't possibly serve others and do the work that we're called to do here. And so that's so incredibly important to me. I've always been a family first person. That's never been a surprise, but this idea of putting your well-being, your personal well-being first, it was something that I believed in and knew I had to model in this way to show people that it's okay. It's okay to take the time to heal, to take care of yourself first so that you can take care of others next.
Absolutely. So what were some of the ways that SDSU did support you and your team during your treatment and recovery?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that, boy, we felt Jackrabbit Nation just wrap their arms around our whole family, and that was true, whether it was, I think, I told my husband, he was my first call and then my first conversation about the treatment, and of course we had to tell family and kids, but Barry Dunn was one of my early phone calls and conversations as my boss and my leader. He needed to know what was going on. And from that very first moment that I told him, he's like, all right, whatever you need, we're here. And then a week later he said, hey, what about bringing Kim? And I was actually going to come to him and say, hey, Kim's getting ready to retire. What about seeing if she wants to come? And so we kind of had that same idea. And he's like, you know what? I know it will cost us a little bit more, but you're important to us. And we're going to make that investment so that you can take the time to heal. He knew me well, and that he knew that was going to be a hard thing for me to do, is step back, and he was very committed. Whether it was, when I told the team, our leadership team, Sherry, you were in that room when I said, here's what's going on. Just the outpouring of support and care that I received throughout my time. Justin Sell, if you ever need a cheerleader, he's like the biggest cheerleader I've ever had in my life. He would just randomly send me messages and say, hey, how you doing? What do you need? Can I come mow your lawn for you? Things like that. And that's one example of the many, the many people that just poured out support. I heard from members of the Council of Trustees and the Board of Governors within the SDSU Foundation. I got notes from, people that I would have never expected, just saying, hey, we're here, or, how can we support you, or here's a gift card, use this however you need to. When I was on leave, meal trains and people stepping up to support us that way. Just the outpouring of care and support from this place, and then bringing in resources to step in. And like I said, Kim was me when I wasn't here, and that was incredibly helpful. But I also had such an amazing leadership team that we had put in place after reorganization. You were one of them, of course, Sean and Toby and Becky and many others. But you guys all stepped up too. And I mean, heck, I was out for chemo every other week. I was not at my best. I had a 6-week stint that I was off, and I was in radiation, so I was kind of essentially working partial days, most days. And that next fall, we had our largest incoming class in the history of this university. And so I think that just shows how people are committed, they're ready to step up, and we just have a really great team here. So so definitely a lot of support from all around.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give to others going through a serious health challenge? We've kind of talked a little bit about this, but if you could expand on that at all.
I think thing one is recognize the limitations that you do have and take the time that you need to heal, to recover, to do what you need to come back as whole, to come back even if being whole is being different than you were before. Take the time that you need to do that. It's really important. Second, I would say is lean on others. People are here to help you and support you. I saw that throughout my journey, that people are here when you need them, whether that is family members, whether that is friends, whether that is colleagues at work. Lean on other people when you need to. They will be there to help. They'll be there to walk with you. And the other thing that I would say is don't be afraid to ask for what you need. I remember when we were talking about meal trains or different things, people want to help, they want to support, but there are certain things that may not make sense for you or your family, or that just aren't what you need. And it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, here's what I need. Here's the limits I'm going to place on that because this is what I need. And people will respect that. They care about you and they really, truly want to be helpful. And so being candid with what you need, I think, is really important too. So those would be maybe a few pieces of advice that I would have.
So looking forward, how do you continue to build that resiliency in your leadership and personal life?
I think for me, it is, I've always been an incredibly driven individual. I'm driven from inside, not from all of the external things, but I will say that resilience is a learned trait, and you have to just keep trying. Things are going to happen in life, and I've always believed, though I am not an incredibly religious person, I've always believed that God has a plan, and there's a plan for me. And I just have to be open to seeing it and experiencing it. And so whatever happens for a reason. I'm supposed to learn something from it. I'm supposed to grow from those experiences. And perhaps I can be a role model and show others the path that they didn't know existed. And so those are the things that I think about when I think about continuing to build resilience in leadership and in personal life. And frankly, I had to do that pretty quickly. I finished up my treatments, was doing really good. 6 months later, I got another cancer diagnosis and was diagnosed with kidney cancer on September 10th, the day after I came out of surgery for my first revision of my mastectomy. And they called and said, "Yep, you have kidney cancer." And so at that point, I'm like, all right, here we go again. That one was easier, though, because it was a surgery and done, but I needed to go to Mayo and spend time there. And so things happen. You just have to, sometimes you have to dig deep. Sometimes you have to lean on other people. Sometimes you have to put it in perspective to say that, you know what, not everybody's as fortunate as I am. I survived breast cancer. I'm going to survive kidney cancer, and I survived kidney cancer. I'm stronger for all those experiences. And so think about, how can I use that to help other people? How can I use that story to say, you know what, you can get through hard things. And I do think the other piece is I've allowed maybe more empathy to live within my leadership. I can't say I'm not empathetic, or I wasn't before this. I think my perspective shifted and changed, and I think that's a good thing. And so it's about taking what comes at you, figure out a plan, lean on the people that you need to lean on for support, and find the path through it. If you, a lot of people told me throughout this whole thing, attitude is everything, and I really did maintain a pretty positive perspective. I was like, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to come out on the other side. Okay, I got kicked down again with kidney cancer. We're going to figure out the path. We get the experts in the room, and we have a successful surgery, and we move forward. I got to keep my kidney. That's pretty exciting stuff. So it's all attitude does play a big role in it. And keeping that positive attitude and that, okay, I can get through this. This is hard, but we'll keep moving forward. So I think that attitude is everything. You hear it a lot, but it really matters, especially when you're dealing with life's challenges and health challenges. Keep a positive attitude, optimism.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much today for sharing your story. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we really appreciate you joining us. Thanks, Michaela.
Yeah, thanks. Go out and get mammograms. Make sure you get tested, and if your body's telling you something, pay attention to it. But go and get those mammograms, ladies.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. This podcast is brought to you by the Mental Wellbeing Team and SD State Health.